Hi, and welcome to the very first 12 Spokes Developer Screencast. My name's Ethan Visite. I'm one of the developers at 12 Spokes, and I have a really simple but useful pattern I want to showcase today inside Backbone.js. Recently, we at 12 Spokes have been using Backbone for the client-side library in a lot of our projects, and if you haven't used Backbone before, this probably isn't the best place to start. There's a really good lesson available at codeschool.com. And it was really helpful for us when we were just starting out on this framework. So if that's the point you need to start at, I recommend going there now. I should clarify here at the beginning that we like and use CoffeeScript for pretty much all of our JavaScript development. So that's what I'll be working in for this screencast. So the behavior we're going to look at today has to do with how to share functionality between different similar components inside the Backbone framework. Now this isn't really something specific to Backbone. This is just a good way to think about sharing functionality between any JavaScript objects. But we really ran up against this problem again and again while working in Backbone for the first time. So this seems like a good environment to examine this problem in. Often in Backbone.js you have a few views that are totally unrelated but do really similar things. You might alert a user of an error or pop up a chat window or display something in a mobile dialog, and having two classes that both have the same functionality inside it is not a great pattern. So let's take a look at an example and we'll find out why. I'm going to have two different view classes that are unrelated, different areas of an application, but they both do something very similar. In this case, they're both delivering a message to the user, and for the sake of simplicity for a screencast, it's just going to use the regular built-in alert function to send whatever message is passed in to the user. Now, from a functionality standpoint, as far as the user is concerned, this works just fine. The messages get delivered, and there's no interruption in functionality, but despite the fact that this is effective, we need to remember that it's bad. Most of you probably don't need to be told why this is bad. You've probably seen it enough before, but I don't like dogmatic assertions, so we're just going to talk about a few reasons. The first problem is that similar functionality is likely to diverge slowly over time. So as you've got the same thing defined a few places and you tweak it in one and you don't in another, then things that are supposed to behave and look pretty similar throughout your application are going to be slightly different. And as they diverge, you get an inconsistent experience for your user, which is typically not confidence building. Secondly, when you come up to a new requirement for that particular feature, when you need to change something significant, when you need to add something, when you need to fix a bug, you can't just do it in one place. That same fix has to be applied in each one of the places where that functionality is defined. So maybe if we wanted to put this simple alert message into a more UI-friendly mobile dialog box, we would have to do that in every one of our views that use that functionality. And you'll probably miss some of those spots. Finally, as you continue to add functionality to that view, you're putting together different concerns and stacking several pieces of unrelated functionality into one class. It can be tough to build a mental map of where all the pieces of your code are if pieces of disparate functionality are just crammed together into large objects. So one way that we can solve this problem is through inheritance. If we have a parent class that inherits from the Backbone view, then we still get to keep all of that same functionality from Backbone, but we can have one place where we define this functionality. So here I've got an alert view that defines that tell the user message, and it inherits from Backbone view, and then any one of my other views, like my business card view here, that's going to need that functionality, instead of inheriting from Backbone view, can just inherit from my alert view. And this really does solve that problem. Now I can have that in one place, and any view that needs it can use it, and I don't have to redefine it anywhere. So if this is the only thing that needs to be shared among our various classes, I've just got this one thing, then this solves our problem. This is a legitimate approach. So let's look at performing this first refactor once in the wild on a real class. So here I've got a business card view that has that same tell the user function we were talking about before. And here I have a message view that's totally unrelated, that belongs in a different area of the site. They don't have anything in common, but it also has tell the user as a function there that does pretty much the exact same thing. So I want to combine them. So I'm going to define a parent class that they can both inherit from. I'm just going to call it alert view, and it's going to extend backbone.view the same way any other view class would. And now I can define the tell the user function. That's really the only thing that needs to be in here. That's the only functionality we're adding on. And now any other class that inherits from the alert view will be able to use this function and won't have to define it on its own. Once that's done, I'm just going to go back to my message view, and I can remove my tell the user function definition and make sure I'm now inheriting from the alert view. Now this one's ready to go, and now I just do the same thing over in my business card view and remove that function, inherit from alert view, and now we've shared that one piece of behavior between these two classes by using an intermediary parent class. So the next thing that's going to come up pretty quickly is, what if we have more than one piece of functionality that needs to be shared amongst multiple views, and sometimes with the same view? Then we have an issue because you can only really inherit from one parent class at a time. So you could have one big parent class that's just the parent class for your application where you cram all these different things into, but then you run into that same problem of having one large object that has a ton of unrelated functionality. So you just end up with this big catch-all class where anytime you need to bump anything up, you add it to this sort of stew of functions. And again, that's difficult to map and difficult to come into and learn. So it's not ideal. Another option is you could start making a somewhat complex hierarchy of inherited classes. So you have an alert view, a chat view, a modal view, certain views that are specific to certain areas within your website that have comment panels in them, and you can have a lot of different parent classes. But then if you have one view that requires the functionality of a few of them, then you have to start building classes that combine them, like having an alert chat view that inherits from alert view and then redefines the chat functionality, and then you're straight back to defining functionality in multiple places. So that's not a great option either. Once we've reached this level of complexity, it would be really nice for each individual view class to be able to decide which pieces of common behavior that I want to pull from my sort of bag of common behaviors for views. So that's what we're going to look at next, a pattern for solving that. Now, before we get into that pattern, I do want to say that this was not my idea. I didn't come up with this. It's something that I found when I was looking for solutions to a few other problems that I was having, and I happened to come across the Backbone Patterns website that's maintained by Rico Cruz. So I highly recommend that you go check that out. There's a lot of good material there. What I'm going to focus on now is the pattern that I found there for solving this problem. Rico refers to it there as a mix-in. Mix-ins are just normal classes with focused functionality that are mixed in to a class after defining it. You can think of it almost like a decorator, but it's used at the class level rather than on an instance, like the usual decorator pattern. You can see that the view we're looking at here inherits from backbone.view like normal, and then there at the end, we're using the extend method from the underscore library to add the alert mixin to the business card view. So anytime I have a view that needs this functionality, I don't need to inherit from it. I just use this same kind of line at the bottom to copy all properties from the mixin over into the view. In that way, I can have many focused mixins, each one performing just the functionality that that class is concerned with, and then I can add one or as many as I want to any view that I want that needs some of that functionality. So let's take those same two classes we were working with before when we changed from duplicated code to inheritance, and try to make the transition from inheritance to using a mixin. There's not really a lot to this. The first thing I'm going to do is go into my parent class, my alert view, and remove any reference to Backbone. This just needs to be a plain old CoffeeScript object. I am also going to change my namespacing. For organization purposes, I like to have mixins in their own namespace. This is not a necessary step, it's just the way I like to organize my code. Then I'm going to go back to one of my inheriting views, change the inheritance tree so that it's coming from backbone.view again. I don't inherit from mixins. Then I'm just going to go to the end of the file, remember outside the class definition, and I'm going to use the underscore extend method to copy all the properties from my mixin over into my view class. From there, I just do the same operations in every class that used to inherit from the alert view, and now we're using it as a mixin instead. There is one little gotcha I want to talk about, and that's that you saw that when I was making those refactors, I was not just extending the class with the class, I was extending the class's prototype with the mixin's prototype. In JavaScript, the prototype object is what actually has all the properties on it that get brought in every time you create a new version of that object. For more on understanding how this works, you can visit the link below. There's a great article there by Angus Kroll that talks about the JavaScript prototype and how that works. That's kind of beyond the scope of this presentation, but for now, just understand you need to use the prototype when you're mixing in. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe to our RSS feed here on the blog in order to get more content like this in the future from 12 Spokes.